Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special bulletin with all the discussion going around on social media concerning Dragon Age the Veilguard. I started to wonder, as I saw some discussion, some extra discussion, considering the game is less than 2 weeks out, and I wondered to myself, what what is the final nail? How much bad press, bad publicity, negative discussion would it take for people to walk away from a beloved franchise? And I started looking around and I wondered again, and I figured, let's hit record and see what there is to talk about. And there was something that popped up that I didn't even know was a thing. Turning off a fail state, essentially. This is a thing in Dragon Age the Veilguard. Did I miss this? Was I just not paying attention back in July when this was talked about? Manually adjust enemy health to make sure players of all abilities can show up. You know, if you want to do that in your game, you are you're free to do that as a developer, but what's the point? Just go watch people play it. If you can completely turn off death and all you want to do is experience the story, just go watch a let's play. Go watch someone you like. It just, to me, and again, turning off death, I wouldn't consider that an accessibility feature. I also don't consider difficulty settings an accessibility feature. But it seemed to me that would turn off the purpose of playing the game, but I digress. Is this something that would stop you from playing the game? What about having absolutely no spiders in the game in a fantasy role-playing game? There would be no spiders. No spider enemies whatsoever. Would that stop you from playing the game? What about the style that they've decided to go with? Is that going to stop you? What about the character creation suffering from the dreaded no acetol with the maximum settings of the chesticles and posterior being rather, leaving a lot to be desired? Thinking about all these different things, and of course, the surgery scars and whatnot, and the different options that they put into the character creators and the options that they took away. No denying that. Made a video on that. I'm all in favor of more options. Just stop taking them away from players and you might win more people over. When it came to this, someone on 4chan decided to speak up. 2 more weeks until the ultimate disaster of the decade, claiming that Dragon Age the Veilguard is ultimately going to fail, saying, "We'll flop harder than Concord, be at the end of BioWare for good. We will celebrate the feast." And before I get into the final article, the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of what I wanted to talk about, Endymion's got an interesting little post that I wanted to share if you haven't read it already, because a good bit of it I kind of agree with them, but of course, you don't want to agree with everything. You don't generally want to follow someone that you agree with 100%, but let's get into it because, tangents. I wouldn't get too hyped for it to fail. I can probably guess it'll review very well for critics. Well, Endymion, we know that for a fact, because the powers that be, the usual suspects, see this game as owning the chuds, so to speak, that they like to say, like all the usual outlets like to say. This is a game for the modern audience. That doesn't exist. So, of course, it's going to be way up there for the critics, almost guaranteed. However, remember, Dragon Age has a built-in fan base of players for well over a decade. And that is true. And I believe not all of them are going to be paying attention to the nonsense online. But the things that I just went over, the character creator, the lack of spiders, the no death, and of course, the massive shift in style for the world, the characters, and whatnot. How much of that is going to turn people away? Endymion continues, personally, even though it has the surgery, scars, etc., it may actually be able to sell very well, and all of that, in my opinion. The community of Dragon Age is very similar to Baldur's Gate. Well, I'd be careful making that comparison because Baldur's Gate was made by a trusted studio. I don't think BioWare is all that trusted anymore, especially with all the nonsense going on. Not to mention Baldur's Gate 3, well, I believe the game is just fun. All the extra nonsense, all the modernization, the what people would call wokeification, the ideological choices, the trans characters that you can actually make, I believe. I still want to get the game. Haven't played it. Sorry. But behind all that, after all that, the game is fun. And I've said this numerous times, and I will continue to say it. You would be surprised at how much gamers will tolerate if what you put in front of them is entertaining. You can have all kinds of messages. You can have all kinds of ideological checkboxes in the character creator, in the world, in the NPCs. If you make the game entertaining, if it makes sense, the character's journey, the world building, all that stuff. If you focus on that first, put your ideological garbage in afterwards, and have it make sense, people will tolerate it and play it and praise you. Let's see. It's one of those anomaly games. I don't know if anomaly games? Because while you could argue Baldur's Gate 3 is very identity politically driven, well, the character creator, some of it is, I'm sure. Bear sex, whatever. Looks like a Friday night gaming night for me with a bunch of friends goofing off and doing astronomically foolish things just to get a laugh. The devs were smart to leave that sort of stuff to you as the player, and I do think that right there is very important. The developers left that to the players instead of making it forced. It was optional, based on the player's choices. That's something that more devs need to pay attention to. Will BioWare do the same? I have my doubts. If so, Veilguard could possibly be similar, and the identity political stuff could exist like it does in Baldur's Gate 3, but could not show up based on your choices. If it does, this will do well regardless like Baldur's Gate 3 did. So if BioWare goes the same route with Dragon Age Veilguard and makes it optional, makes it to where you can make those particular choices. And the reason why I don't think that's going to be possible is because I think the devs came out and said, it gave me the impression that it's going to be more linear, like a fake open world, fake choices that will push you down the path of good and righteousness and all that other stuff, instead of, making those not so great choices where NPCs and your party members will look at you differently. I don't think that's going to happen with this version, with this iteration. However, if the political stuff is unavoidable despite player choices, then there's a problem. It's always the problem. That will always be the problem. They don't want to give the players choices. They give them the illusion of choice. That's what I see happening. Will we see the usual nonsense like women only in power? I don't know if they're going to go that far. We'll have to wait and see. This is a big, massive wait and see, because the only thing they've been talking about is the sexuality of the game. They've only shown the character creation. They've not talked about the story. They've not talked about the world. They're just talking about all these things. They're trying to ride the coattails of Baldur's Gate 3 and the freedom, the massive amount of freedom that you could do, that you had in Baldur's Gate 3. And that's the marketing. I haven't seen much. They showed some gameplay, and that's another thing that might turn people away. The more action-oriented. It's coming across as a massive departure from what made Dragon Age Dragon Age. Let's see. Next paragraph. As a longtime fan of Dragon Age, I will be playing the game myself, mostly because I want to cover this game extensively and figure out what's going on here is going to either confirm suspicions or not. To figure out what's going on here is going to confirm suspicions or not. So essentially putting his money where his mouth is, and I commend you for that, Endymion. More people need to do that. If you're going to talk about the game, if you're going to chastise the developers, if you're going to criticize them, put your money where your mouth is. It's a tax write-off. Anyway, sorry. We do this for our channels. It's why I played Dustborn. Oh boy, I still have PTSD from that. But if I can play it from beginning to end, and based on my choices, have my own based normal experience, I will let people know. Because when I played Baldur's Gate 3, there was no agenda, again, because player choice allowed it to be so. It's going to be an interesting release for sure. Oh, boy, will it ever. And we're less than 2 weeks away. I'll be very excited to see what happens. I'm considering picking it up just, to stream it. I don't know. Should I? Yeah, let me know. It will most definitely cause a shitstorm when it happens. It's already causing a shitstorm in Endymion. So we'll see. We've already seen it. And before someone says, why buy it if you're... why buy it? You're supporting it. That's not how it works, okay? as a content creator, with you, when you have a YouTube channel and you talk about video games and you review video games, and same thing goes for TV and movies and whatnot. You watch it, you have fans that will tune in to check on your opinion, to see what you think about it, and then make the decision. Situations like this in Endymion buying and in the numerous channels that are going to pick up Dragon Age, the Veilguard. I believe Veilguard has talked about this on, consistently. She picks up games. She puts her money where her mouth is. She streams every single solitary one of them, regardless of whether or not she thinks they're going to succeed or they're going to fail. She puts her money where her mouth is. And the people who tune into her streams to check on her opinion, to see how the game is, will make a decision whether or not they want to buy it or not. So one of two things is going to happen. For Endymion's fans, for Veilguard's fans, for the countless channels out there, people will tune in to their streams, watch what happens, listen to their opinions, and make the decisions. Yes, I'm going to buy it because it looks fantastic and sounds like you're having a lot of fun, or I am not spending a dime on this game, and hundreds, if not thousands of sales will disappear, if not more so. So the idea of hate watching, hate purchasing, you're supporting it. It is one person, one single person that could stop hundreds of players from buying it. That's why we wait for reviews. That's why we don't pre-order. Let's see. But if my one purchase can help see if the game is what people fear, or to see if it's the game that people want to play, well, you can save thousands more. I played Forspoken, Alan Wake 2, Spider-Man 2, God of War, Ragnarok, all games with these consultants, people involved. So let people you trust, I've said this before, and I'll continue saying it. Let people you trust suffer through these things, and we can tell you just how bad, or maybe just how good it is, depending on what happens. Again, he's going to sleep now. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because this lovely little article from That Park Place doesn't look so good. By the way, thank you for making it this far. Dragon Age the Veilguard still outside Steam's top 50 best sellers with only 2 weeks until release. Almost like people aren't pre-ordering it through Steam, at least not through Steam. I don't know what other areas. I believe it's on PlayStation 5. I have a decision to make. Is the discussion affecting the pre-orders? Are people holding onto their wallets, waiting for those reviews? I do hope so. Let's see. SteamDB reports that Dragon Age the Veilguard has moved up the charts. Really? But not significantly. The game currently sits in the 57th position in Steam's top sellers and is just inside the top 30 of the most wish list upcoming Steam games in 28th position. So, oh my goodness, not even in the top 50 of already pre-ordered, and wish listing only in 28th. People are barely excited for this game. A little less than a month ago, the game was just 38th on SteamDB's most wish list. So a month ago, it moved up 10 spots. Oh goodness. Upcoming Steam games and 80th in top sellers. So good news, it moved up almost 30 spots in the top sellers. Congratulations, Dragon Age Veilguard. Maybe the bad press wasn't. I'm being facetious. Anyway, of note, many of the games that were ahead of it on the most wish-listed upcoming Steam games listed have indeed come out. Oh, dear. So it moved up partially because the games on the wish list came out. Dragon Age Sparkling Zero, Metaphor, Throne and Liberty, God of War, Ragnarok, then The Forever Winter, and Silent Hill 2. So the game's movement from 38th to 28th is likely, well, partially, if not mostly, because games have come out that were above it, rather than it actually receiving significantly more wish lists. Oh dear. In fact, as noted above, the game only saw an increase of just 1,887 more followers in the last 7 days. I don't know how to judge that metric, so we're going to move on. Not only does it appear I don't like this style. I own the original Dragon Age, and it's just, I like the style from games like not Elder Scrolls. Well, I do like the style of Elder Scrolls. Yes, Elder Scrolls. Anyway, the original Dragon Age games. I like that. If I'm playing a fantasy role-playing game and you've already established a particular style, a more realistic style, Why would you shift away from that so drastically? I mix up Elden Ring and Elder Scrolls so often, and the one time that I thought I mixed it up, I didn't. Not only does it appear to be tracking does it not appear to be tracking well, but a couple of the aforementioned games that were ahead of it are finding fantastic success on Steam and will clearly compete with it, even though they might not be in the same genre. Well, I wouldn't compare games in separate genres to each other. This game should be compared to the likes of Elder Scrolls, to the likes of, well, probably Elden Ring a little bit. It is a FromSoft game, but it is in the fantasy role-playing genre. But it should be compared definitely 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt to Baldur's Gate 3. How is this going to do compared to Baldur's Gate 3? I think we all know the answer to that, regardless of how many copies this sells. It will get good reviews from the usual suspects in the games journalist media, but looks like people are holding on to their pre-orders, holding on to their wallets nice and tight until more information comes out. Maybe their favorite channels are reviewing it. But I still wonder, what is the final nail? What makes the final edition, the final red flag that would get people to turn their backs on an age-old franchise that they've come to love? Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what would stop you from buying. What is ultimately the final thing that stopped you from being interested in this game? If you have been interested in the Dragon Age franchise, what stopped you? What was the final decision, the final red flag? Let me know in the comments section down below. Leave a like, leave a dislike, do all those nifty little things that YouTube is begging you to do. And I do hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.